We grind your floors with pride and joy. Old school craft with modern toys. Terrazzo masters, we love the rocks. Mix and match to create floors that are the boss.
Nolan here with Victoria Stone Design. This video is meant to be a bit of an overview on the installation of terrazzo floors. It's not going to go into details, but it's going to be a bit of an inspirational video to show possibilities and the various processes. So there's three different parts to terrazzo flooring installation. You have the grinding, floor leveling, and divider strips layout. You have part two is the pouring of the terrazzo itself. And then the third phase is the grinding, polishing, patching, and finishing phase. Now, before getting into all of the breakdown of this video, I'll just give a bit of a backlog history of my experience and how I got to this place. So I have been working with concrete for 27 years. Maybe it's 28 actually, somewhere in there. I was originally inspired by, I saw a book on Gaudi and his mosaic. So I did a lot of mosaic work, went to tile stores and got the sample boards and broke those up and started making mosaic flooring. From there, it just got into one thing after another. I got inspired from friends and they got me into concrete. We were using stucco pigments, Imasco stucco pigments and routering floors and using muriatic acid to etch images into floors. That got me excited about precast. One thing led to another and we got into UHPC. There's a whole separate precast company. And currently I am pretty focused on terrazzo. For the last 10 to 12 years, that's been exclusive and we are right into it. Phase one, grinding, leveling, and divider strips. So when preparing a substrate for terrazzo, we need to make sure that the floor is open. So this could be scarifying, using a really heavy grinding wheel, 16 grit or less, sandblasting, shot blasting, something to roughen up and get a good profile. From there, we are then putting down a bonding agent. In most cases, we're using a two-part epoxy with sand broadcast. Sometimes a primer can be used, a water-based primer, but most of the time for us, we're using two-part epoxy. And then after that's done, we are doing divider strips. Divider strips help in a couple different ways. The first off is crack control. So anywhere there's a column, anywhere there's a control joint, we want to use divider strips. They also help to delineate the floor and are aesthetic. So if you want to have color separation where there's a border running around, you can use a different color there, different types of aggregates to create logos and emblems. You can bend them around. There's all kinds of different ways in which they can use creatively. The second phase is pouring and placing the terrazzo itself. Now, right off the get-go, you want to make sure you have all the materials weighed out and put aside, easily accessible. Once you get into the pour, things turn into chaos really quickly. So another rule of thumb is you always want to have about 20% extra material on hand. It's really hard to calculate exact quantities and how much you're going to need. So 20% extra as a rule of thumb is the way to go. Now, the pouring phase is super fun because you can essentially integrally color the concrete whatever you want. You can broadcast any type of stone, glass, metals into the floor, and you can do whatever you want. You can put knockouts in the floor out of rubber or some sort of foam and then pour around that, peel that up, and then back pour that with another color. The possibilities are infinite and it's a really fun medium because of that. We poured pink concrete, we poured black concrete, we do Palladian terrazzo, we put metals in it, we put glass, you name it, we've tried it. It's a lot of fun. Sky's the limit. Try for yourself and let us know what you like and what's possible. Phase three, once you pour the terrazzo, you need to let it cure. In most cases, we're getting on our floors the next day, but depending on your mix, that'll change. So when you first get on a floor, it can be quite bumpy because of the stone or the mix. So we very likely will do a bit of handwork and just get some of those bumps down because you don't want to blow a belt on a big heavy machine. Now you're losing time and money. First cut, you want to essentially just flatten the floor as much as possible. You don't want to try to get exposure, because what'll happen is you'll get uneven marks and you start creating dishes and troughs. Speaking of that, you always want to edge and make sure you bring your edges down prior to the machine running into them, because what'll happen, you'll have an edge that is higher, the machine will come in, it'll back cut, and then you'll have a bit of a dish, and that will just keep exponentially growing, and you'll have a massive crater in your floor. Now, on the divider strips, they essentially are stanchions with the brass or zinc on top, and there's only so much to go. So if you grind too far into them, say if you have a 1/4-inch brass divider strip, and you grind too far, you're going to get into that stanchion, and now you're going to see the thin zinc profile coming through. Well, it's aluminum. If it's zinc, you're going to see it. You won't see it as much. But with brass, you'll definitely see it'll be a big problem. Once you flatten the floor and all the divider strips are exposed, you're going to move on through the grits and take scratches out. Once you don't see any scratches, you can start look at slurring the floor. Now, we pre-wet the floor so you don't wick all the moisture out of the patching material. And then we'll use a material like Star Patch or an Ardex, or we'll mix up our own Portland cement and use a bonding agent. You can pigment those patching compounds in the same way so it matches the base mix. You get that down, let it cure, and then we always wet polish to take it off so the polymers don't heat up. Once all the slurry is off, you can start in the polishing phase and then bring it all the way up to the desired grit, and then you're into sealing. We tend to densify our floors because we use cementitious terrazzos. It does help with our mixes, but it's not a necessary step for every process. Made it this far into the video, thank you very much for listening. There's going to be a lot of new content coming out in the very near future. Subscribe and like, and you'll be able to catch up all the latest.